As a young boy, I grew up in a dance studio. Both of my sisters would go on to the Juilliard School of Ballet and appear in several movies. I merely left dance with an obsession of creating the illusion of floating, whether it be ballet or jazz as it was called, before hip-hop, the time when Michael Jackson slid across the planet, and even modern dance, and those who could control certain movements of the body, with the right force at the right time and with the right flair. I became obsessed with this illusion of floating and those who could create it. It wasn't until I was introduced to the trampoline where I thought, you mean to tell me that I can create this illusion way up there? I think we as coaches sometimes get too caught up in the six events and forget the importance of the beauty and mastery of those who can perform the trampoline. When I was first introduced, I was mesmerized with those who could appear to float in one place while flipping and twisting every which way. I mean, how are they able to stay in the middle of the trampoline while doing all of this, right? The most important step in creating this illusion is developing the gainer. All of us at one time have probably worked with an athlete that is traveling backwards on a standing back tuck. Whether it is their head that is thrown back or their shoulders that lean back, most athletes imagine that in order to flip backwards, they must actually flip backwards or go backwards. In regards to creating this illusion, its true effect is in the ability to appear to float, right? And is only achieved if the illusion of flipping is done under or in front of themselves. Most athletes know how to flip leaning back and are very good at it, right? Hopefully then they develop the ability to stay in the same place. But when mastering the gainer, the athlete can then develop the ability to travel forwards, most importantly. And by mastering these both extremes, the athlete can explore the middle, where this illusion is actually achieved. This is the space I like to hang out most as an athlete. Once this idea is mastered, the athlete may then learn to create as much power as they can going backwards and then obsess over the countering of that force enough to cancel out the backward momentum, sending the skill straight up, and ultimately creating this weightless space in which the athlete can explore accenting the full tuck, pike kick out, or even their head position to further drive this illusion. The most exciting step is now when the athlete can begin to correlate the bounce of the trampoline with the bounce of the high bar. Your athlete can then reverse engineer each release on the high bar into a trampoline motion years before they ever let go of the bar, and after thousands of repetitions of these motions and constantly applying the gainer towards each, the athlete will inevitably develop a perfectly timed, more powerful ability to block forward, ultimately leading towards more exciting releases. As a coach, I find it rewarding to trick your athletes into playing games with these motions and to make them believe it was their idea. After all, a Ginger is a mimic of a kaboom half to your stomach, and a Kovacs echoes the accordion trampoline, right? Notice this developed pressure pushing away fully, this exaggerated shoulder extension into the aggressive arching shape change, then snapping into the gainer. When applied to high bar, these concepts shed months of trial and error and creates the ability to see the bar earlier and significantly reduces the inherent risk to injury. When I first started learning releases, it was a common coach's critique to just let go of the bar a little earlier. Hopefully you could control that. You could even have your athletes flip around a stick for years, mimicking the tap swing and high bar bounce. I mean, shouldn't they first learn to mimic these taps with something that could actually stay tight, right? After the bounce is discovered, the athlete hopefully realizes that almost every skill they have learned previously on high bar has a specific bounce. The kip, of course, is a big realization and one of the first of these concepts. The baby giant is a good one, and then the free hip. I find that the Stalter and Endo are the defining basic fundamentals, however, that when finally mastered, the athlete now has the ability to time, manipulate, and slam their own weight into bouncing the bar at the furthest of its circle. Once it's realized that the tap swing requires something more, I invite you to spend some time studying trapeze artists and their ability to exaggerate the toe-down position and dragging or hanging position throughout the bottom of their swing, that shape changing from the tight arch to that exploding candlestick position. if your athlete could just mimic 5% of this right. So you reward your athletes into experiencing this career-changing concept, and your athlete begins to explore the extremes of their new exaggerated tap swing. Now, most importantly, the athlete must learn to create the swing from absolutely nothing, emphasizing the extension in the shoulders as the tap's most important driving force. Just as a child learns to swing on a swing set, as the tap is then more refined and timed correctly, and then its created bounce is finally efficient, the athlete ultimately learns to swing higher, and is never exposed to the ungraceful nature of ever muscling this motion. The pressure on the bar is then developed, leading towards a more extended and pushed out tapping circle. This is the most important part of this whole concept in terms of creating the most potential power from this significantly larger shape-changing bounce from the bar. The toe-on toe-off is obviously a great concept into initially training your athlete to developing an exaggerated dragging or hanging shape throughout the bottom of their newly created tap swing. The toe-on toe-off is only achieved if this concept is understood, which is ultimately controlling the head and shoulder angle after dragging long enough and gaitering under themselves, with absolutely pulling down on the bar. A pull down in order to turn over as fast as possible, but not allowing or creating a head or shoulder angle whatsoever. Your athlete now has the ability to generate a wind-up into this coiled-up shape, then next countering that wind-up by creating an explosive, tight arch position. The most important part is developing the ability to hang until the second bounce is achieved, however, as this is where the high bar then turns into the last bounce of the trampoline. After mastering the ability to extend throughout the bottom of the tap swing, it is then possible to explode into understanding the top of the bounce as well. And met with the mastery of the gainer, your athlete can then start checking the ceiling heights into every new gym they step foot in.